They say some people are born into destiny. Others stumble upon it in the most unexpected places. For Maya, destiny was wrapped in a blanket, hidden in the bushes and crying in the darkness. She had no idea that stopping to investigate those cries would transform her from a struggling girl with nothing into something far greater. This is the true story of how one abandoned baby didn't just change a life, he saved it. But before we begin, if you love incredible true stories that will restore your faith in humanity, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because what you're about to hear will stay with you long after this video ends. It was a cold Tuesday evening in November when Maya's life changed forever. She was 19 years old, exhausted from another 16-hour day of working 3 different jobs just to afford a tiny room in a shared apartment on the wrong side of town. Her hands were calloused, her feet ached, and her dreams of college had long faded into the background noise of survival. Maya wasn't living. She was merely existing, moving from one day to the next with no real purpose, no family to speak of, and no hope that things would ever get better. That evening, like most evenings, she was walking home from her shift at a convenience store. The bus fare was too expensive, so she walked the 3 miles home every night, rain or shine. She knew every crack in the sidewalk, every shortcut through the neighborhoods, every stray dog that barked from behind chain-link fences. But tonight was different. Tonight, she decided to cut through the old park to save 10 minutes. The park was dark, overgrown, and most people avoided it after sunset. But Maya was too tired to care about safety. She just wanted to get home, eat whatever was left in her mini fridge and collapse into bed. As she walked along the dimly lit path, something made her stop. It was faint at first, barely audible over the sound of her own footsteps and the distant traffic. But then she heard it clearly. Crying. Not the wail of a hurt animal or the sound of teenagers playing around. This was the unmistakable sound of a baby crying. Maya's heart began to race. She looked around, half expecting to see a parent nearby, maybe someone who had stepped away for just a moment. But the park was empty. The crying continued, desperate and weak, coming from somewhere in the bushes to her left. Her instinct screamed at her to keep walking, to not get involved, to call the police and let them handle it. But something deeper pulled her forward. Maya pushed through the overgrown bushes, scratching her arms on thorny branches until she saw it. There, nestled in the dirt and fallen leaves, was a newborn baby. The child couldn't have been more than a few days old, wrapped in what looked like an expensive cashmere blanket that seemed wildly out of place in this neglected park. The baby's face was red from crying, tiny fists waving in the air, and around the infant's neck hung a delicate golden locket that caught the faint moonlight. Maya's hands trembled as she picked up the baby. The child immediately quieted, as if sensing that help had finally arrived. She looked around frantically, searching for any sign of the parents, a note, anything that would explain why a newborn was abandoned in the bushes like discarded trash. But there was nothing. Just the expensive blanket, the golden locket, and this tiny life that someone had thrown away. Maya's mind raced. She should call the police. She should take the baby to a hospital. She should do a lot of things. But as she held this warm, fragile life against her chest, something shifted inside her. For the first time in years, she felt needed. She felt like she mattered. Maya made a decision that would change everything. She wrapped the baby tighter in the blanket and hurried home. Just for tonight, she told herself. Just until she figured out what to do. She'd call someone in the morning. She'd make the right choice. But tonight, this baby needed warmth, safety, and someone to care. And for reasons she couldn't quite explain, Maya knew she was supposed to be that someone. When she got back to her tiny room, reality hit her like a freight train. She didn't have diapers. She didn't have formula. She didn't have anything a baby needed. Her room was barely big enough for her own belongings, let alone an infant. The walls were thin, the heating barely worked, and she was pretty sure her landlord would evict her the moment he found out about the baby. But as she looked down at the now sleeping infant in her arms, none of that seemed to matter. She used an old t-shirt as a makeshift diaper, warmed some milk she had in the fridge, and spent the entire night watching the baby sleep, terrified that something would go wrong. That one night turned into 2, then 3, then a week. Maya told herself every single day that tomorrow she would make the call, tomorrow she would do the responsible thing. But every time she looked at this baby, every time he grabbed her finger with his tiny hand, every time he looked up at her with those trusting eyes, she couldn't do it. She was terrified that if she called the authorities, they wouldn't believe her story. They'd think she was the one who abandoned him. They'd take him away and put him into a system that might not love him the way she already did. Because that's what had happened. In just 1 week, Maya had fallen completely in love with this child. She named him Lucas. If you're wondering what happened next, Make sure you hit that like button because Maya's journey is about to get even more intense, and you won't want to miss a single moment of this incredible story. Raising Lucas was the hardest thing Maya had ever done, and she'd done a lot of hard things in her 19 years. Money that was already tight became nearly impossible to manage. Diapers, formula, baby clothes, everything a baby needed, it all cost money she didn't have. She picked up a fourth job, cleaning houses on weekends, and survived on 3 hours of sleep a night. She'd work all day, come home to care for Lucas, then stay up half the night rocking him when he cried, only to wake up 2 hours later and do it all over again. Her roommates complained about the noise. Her bosses complained about her exhaustion. Her body was breaking down from the relentless pace. There were nights when Maya sat on the floor of her room, holding a crying Lucas, tears streaming down her own face, wondering what she had done. She could barely take care of herself. How could she possibly take care of another human being? She thought about that golden locket often, the one piece of evidence that Lucas came from somewhere else, from people who probably had money and resources and everything she didn't have. Maybe she should have tried harder to find his family. Maybe she had made a terrible mistake. Maybe she was being selfish, keeping him when she could barely provide the basics. But then something would happen. Lucas would smile at her, that gummy, toothless baby smile that made everything feel worthwhile. Or he'd fall asleep on her chest, his tiny heartbeat against hers, and she'd feel a sense of purpose she'd never experienced before. Maya realized that Lucas wasn't just a responsibility. He was the reason she got up every morning. He was the reason she fought so hard. Before Lucas, she was just surviving, going through the motions of life without any real direction. But now she had someone who depended on her completely. Someone who thought she was the whole world. And that changed everything. Her neighbors began to notice. At first, they were suspicious and judgmental. A teenage girl with a baby and no father in sight invited all kinds of whispered conversations and disapproving looks. But gradually, something beautiful started to happen. Mrs. Chin, the elderly woman who lived down the hall, started bringing over hand-me-down baby clothes from her grandchildren. Marcus, the college student next door, would watch Lucas for an hour here and there when Maya had overlapping work shifts. Teresa from upstairs, a single mother herself, taught Maya everything she wished someone had taught her about babies, from how to soothe colic to the best budget-friendly formula brands. A community formed around Maya and Lucas. People who had nothing started sharing what little they had. And in the process, Maya transformed. The defeated, exhausted girl who had found a baby in the bushes was becoming a fierce, determined mother. She learned to stretch every dollar, to find free resources, to advocate for what Lucas needed. She became resourceful in ways she never imagined possible. She found a better job, one with slightly better pay and more flexible hours. She moved into a slightly bigger apartment, nothing fancy, but it had space for a crib and wasn't falling apart. Years passed. Lucas grew from an infant into a toddler, then into a bright, curious 5-year-old boy. He was everything to Maya. Sure, their life wasn't easy. They still struggled financially. Lucas wore thrift store clothes and his toys came from garage sales. But he was happy, healthy, and so deeply loved. Maya had sacrificed everything for him, her youth, her dreams, any chance at a normal life for someone her age. But she had also gained everything. Lucas had given her purpose, family, and a love so profound it made all the sacrifices worthwhile. Maya often wondered about Lucas's biological family. She kept the blanket and the locket, hidden away in a box under her bed. Sometimes late at night, she'd take out the locket and examine it, wondering what secrets it held. It was clearly expensive, engraved with delicate flowers and what looked like initials, but too worn to read clearly. Who had put this on Lucas? Why had they left him in that park? Did they ever think about him? Did they regret their choice? Maya pushed these thoughts away. Lucas was hers now. Whatever had happened before that November night didn't matter anymore. But fate, as it turns out, had other plans. It was a Saturday afternoon when everything changed again. Lucas was at school for a weekend art program, and Maya was home doing laundry when there was a knock at her door. She wasn't expecting anyone. When she opened it, she found herself face to face with an elegant woman in her 60s, dressed in expensive clothes that looked completely out of place in Maya's building. The woman's eyes widened the moment she saw Maya, and tears immediately began streaming down her face. "Is he here?" the woman whispered, her voice shaking. "Please tell me he's here. Please tell me you're the one who found him." Maya's blood ran cold. She knew instantly who this woman was talking about. After 5 years of wondering, of looking over her shoulder, of fearing this exact moment, Lucas's past had finally caught up with them. Maya's first instinct was to slam the door, to protect her son from whatever this was. But something in the woman's eyes stopped her. It wasn't anger or judgment. It was desperate, aching hope mixed with unbearable grief. "Who are you?" Maya managed to ask, her voice barely steady. "My name is Catherine Chin," the woman said. "And I've been searching for my grandson for 5 years. Now, I want you to pause for a moment and think about what you would do in Maya's situation. Would you let this stranger in? Would you protect the child you raised? Drop your answer in the comments below, because what happens next will absolutely shock you." Maya's world tilted. She wanted to deny everything to protect Lucas, to send this woman away. But Catherine Chin wasn't here with lawyers or police. She was here as a grandmother who had lost something precious. Against every screaming instinct, Maya stepped aside and let her in. They sat across from each other in Maya's small living room, two women whose lives had been forever altered by the same child, and Catherine began to tell her story. Catherine's daughter, Sophia, had gotten pregnant young, just 20 years old, by a man who disappeared the moment he found out. Sophia had been so excited about the baby, so ready to be a mother despite the circumstances. But something went terribly wrong after Lucas was born. Sophia developed severe postpartum psychosis, a condition Catherine admitted she hadn't even known existed. Within days of giving birth, Sophia became delusional, paranoid, convinced that something was wrong with the baby, that he was in danger, that she had to hide him. One night, while Catherine was asleep and Sophia's father was at work, Sophia took the baby and disappeared. By the time they realized she was gone, hours had passed. They searched everywhere, called the police, organized search parties. 3 days later, they found Sophia wandering downtown, incoherent and alone. She couldn't tell them where the baby was. The psychosis had fractured her memory. She would cry and scream about hiding him somewhere safe, about putting him where the bad people couldn't find him, but she couldn't remember where. They searched for months. Police investigated. They checked hospitals, shelters, every park in the city. But they never found him. The cashmere blanket Sophia had taken was missing. So was Catherine's mother's locket, the one Sophia had been wearing. Catherine knew, hoped, prayed that wherever Sophia had left the baby, someone good had found him. But as months turned into years with no leads, that hope faded. They had to accept that he was probably gone forever. Then, 3 months ago, Catherine was in line at a grocery store when she saw a little boy with his mother. The boy was wearing a shirt from a school just a few miles from where Sophia had been found that night. But it wasn't the location that made Catherine's heart stop. It was the necklace around the child's neck. Even from a distance, even after 5 years, Catherine recognized her mother's locket. She'd followed them carefully, not wanting to scare them, and eventually discovered where they lived. She'd spent weeks trying to decide what to do, consulting lawyers, talking to therapists, praying for guidance. Because she realized that this young woman, this girl who looked barely older than Sophia had been, had raised her grandson. Had saved him when she couldn't. "I don't want to take him away from you," Catherine said, her voice breaking. "I can see this place, I can see how hard you've worked. I can see that you love him. I just want to know him. I want to be part of his life. My daughter, she never recovered. The guilt, the not knowing, it destroyed her. She took her own life 2 years ago. So now Lucas, he's all I have left of her. But I know you're his mother. You're the one who was there for every scraped knee, every nightmare, every milestone. I just want a chance to love him too." Maya couldn't speak. Tears poured down her face as 5 years of fear, uncertainty, and love crashed over her. She'd spent so long afraid of this moment, afraid that someone would come and tear her family apart. But this wasn't the confrontation she'd imagined. This was a grandmother, destroyed by loss, asking not to take but to share. They talked for hours. Catherine learned about that November night, about Maya's struggle to raise Lucas alone, about the community that had rallied around them. Maya learned about Sophia, about the mental illness that had stolen her life, about Catherine's desperate 5-year search. They cried together. They laughed at stories about Lucas, discovering they both loved the same stubborn, brilliant, beautiful child. When Lucas came home that afternoon, chattering excitedly about the robot he'd built in art class, he found his mom sitting with a strange woman who looked at him like he was the most precious thing in the world. Maya knelt down to his level. "Lucas, baby, I need to tell you something important. This is your grandmother Catherine. She's been looking for you for a very long time." What happened next changed everything in ways Maya never could have imagined. Catherine didn't come with demands or ultimatums. She came with open arms and resources Maya had never dreamed possible. Within weeks, Catherine's lawyers had worked through the complicated legal process of giving Maya full legal custody of Lucas while establishing Catherine's grandparents' rights. Lucas now had 2 families instead of one, and both families loved him completely. Catherine set up a trust fund for Lucas's education, ensuring that the bright boy who loved building robots would be able to go to any college he dreamed of. She helped Maya find a better apartment, not a mansion, but a real two-bedroom place in a safe neighborhood with good schools. But the most unexpected gift came when Catherine offered Maya a job. Catherine ran a nonprofit foundation dedicated to helping young mothers in crisis, and she wanted Maya to manage a new program specifically for girls aging out of foster care who found themselves pregnant and alone. Catherine had seen firsthand what Maya was capable of, how she could take nothing and create everything, and she wanted other young women to have the support Maya never did. Maya accepted. Not because of the salary, though it was more money than she'd ever imagined making. Not because of the stability, though that was life-changing. She accepted because she finally understood her purpose. Finding Lucas hadn't just saved her life. It had prepared her to save others. All those years of struggle, of figuring out how to survive and provide with nothing, all of it had meaning now. She could take everything she'd learned and use it to help girls just like her, girls who felt hopeless and alone, girls who needed someone to believe in them. Lucas thrived with his expanded family. He had Maya, his mom in every way that mattered, the woman who had sacrificed everything for him. And he had Catherine, his grandmother, who shared stories about his birth mother Sophia, keeping her memory alive. He learned that family wasn't just about blood. It was about love, sacrifice, and showing up day after day even when things were impossibly hard. On Lucas's 6th birthday, Catherine gave him the locket that had been around his neck that night in the park. Inside were 2 tiny photographs. One of Sophia, young and smiling, taken before mental illness stole her life. And one of Maya, taken the day she'd registered Lucas for kindergarten, exhausted but beaming with pride. "You come from 2 mothers," Catherine told him. "One who gave you life and one who gave you everything else. And you are loved beyond measure by both." Maya watched this moment, her heart so full it ached. She thought about that cold November night, about the crying in the darkness, about the split-second decision to push through those bushes instead of walking away. She thought about all the times she almost gave up, all the moments she questioned whether she was enough. And she realized that sometimes the things we find when we're lost are exactly what we needed to be found. Lucas hadn't just changed her life. He'd given her one. The foundation Maya now ran served over 200 young mothers in its first year. She hired other women who had been through similar struggles, creating jobs and support networks that broke cycles of poverty. She lobbied for better support for postpartum mental health, working to prevent other tragedies like Sophia's. And every single day she came home to Lucas, helped with homework, made dinner, and felt grateful for the incredible journey that had brought them together. People often asked Maya if she ever regretted finding Lucas that night. If she ever wished she'd walked past, let someone else take on the burden of an abandoned baby. She always smiled at these questions because they revealed a fundamental misunderstanding. Lucas was never a burden. He was a gift. He was the reason she discovered strength she didn't know she had. He was the reason she learned what unconditional love meant. He was the reason her life had purpose and meaning beyond just surviving another day. Sometimes on quiet evenings, Maya would take Lucas to that old park where she found him that they'd walked the same path she'd taken 5 years earlier, though it was better lit and maintained now thanks to Catherine's foundation funding. Lucas would run ahead, carefree and happy, completely unaware of how much had changed since that November night. And Maya would watch him, this miracle child who had transformed everything, and feel overwhelmed with gratitude for the crying in the darkness that had led her to push through those bushes. Because that's the thing about destiny. Sometimes it doesn't announce itself with fanfare or obvious signs. Sometimes it's wrapped in a blanket, hidden in the bushes, crying in the darkness, waiting for exactly the right person to find it. Maya had thought she was saving Lucas that night. But the truth was so much more beautiful and complicated than that. They had saved each other. If Maya's incredible journey has touched your heart today, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another inspiring story like this. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that even in our darkest moments, life can surprise us with unimaginable blessings. And drop a comment telling me what this story meant to you. Did it change how you think about family? About purpose? About the unexpected ways our lives can transform? I read every single comment, and your stories inspire the content we create. Before you go, I want you to remember something important. Maya wasn't special because she was perfect or because she had all the answers. She was special because when life presented her with an impossible choice, she chose love over fear. She chose to act instead of walking away. She chose to believe that somehow, some way she would figure it out. And that choice, that one moment of courage in a dark park, created ripples that changed countless lives. The foundation Maya runs has now helped over 1,000 young mothers. Lucas is now 10 years old, thriving in school, still building robots and talking about becoming an engineer someday. Catherine remains an integral part of their lives, a grandmother who chose grace over bitterness and love over loss. And Maya? She's no longer that exhausted 19-year-old girl with no hope and no future. She's a mother, a leader, an advocate, and living proof that our circumstances don't define us. Our choices do. So the next time you face an impossible situation, the next time you hear crying in the darkness and wonder if you should get involved, remember Maya. Remember that the hardest choices often lead to the most beautiful outcomes. Remember that family is built through love and sacrifice, not just biology. And remember that sometimes, the things that seem like burdens in the moment turn out to be the greatest blessings of our lives. Thank you so much for watching this incredible true story. If you enjoyed it, check out the video appearing on your screen right now about another unexpected journey that will absolutely blow your mind. Until next time, remember that your life can change in an instant. Stay open to the possibilities. Stay willing to take risks for what matters. And never, ever walk past the crying in the darkness. You never know whose life you might save, or who might end up saving yours.